ourselves on the key.
I just wanted to say, personally, I was very concerned because you were in the city that day, and the phone lines, the whole Verizon network had gotten knocked out, and I couldn't reach you, and so you didn't call till later. And I remember that Leia was 3 years old, and she kept wandering in, and every time she'd wander in, I kept turning off the television because I was so afraid for her to see those terrible images. But what I do remember, it was a Tuesday, and I remember that Wednesday night, the congregation had a special service at Victor Fite's home, and we just all stood around, and each one of us, we had a service, and each one of us had a chance to speak, and we were all standing for almost 2 hours, and what I remember was Lisa Kirchman, who at the time, when we didn't have the sophisticated Torah cabinet that we have now, and different members of the temple used to take the Torah home with them after services in a large canvas bag. I remember Lisa saying, if this is the end, I somehow feel comforted that I'm going to end with the Torah in my home. And it was just such a poignant thing. It was such an amazing evening for the whole congregation to be together like that and to comfort each other. It was enormous.
After 10 years, I would ask us, how has the world changed? How is the world different than it was 10 years ago? Does the world feel different to you?
Every time you try to travel.
Every time you try to travel, everybody's more for it. Certainly, with the current news, we're reminded again, right, that we entered into, that it was sort of the official introduction to a very different time. We live in more anxious times, don't we? We feel somewhat more fearful, more threatening. Threat is unrelenting.
We're still fighting the war. We have a body count every day, and there's young men dying as a result of September 11th.
There's an interesting axiom of Jewish history. It says that among other things, Jews are sort of the canary in the coal mine. What happens first to Jews, sooner or later happens to everybody else as well. And in an odd way, all of us know what it is like to live in Israel. That is, that there is a sense of ongoing existential threat. Right? You sublimate it. It's not in the foreground of your mind all the time, but it kind of works back there, doesn't it? Every once in a while, something happens that stirs it up. It could be that you're traveling, it could be news like news that we got yesterday night, or whatever it is, or some personal event, or somebody whose name shows up in the newspaper unhappily, for some circumstance. It goes on. It's not like World War II that ended. It goes on. That is the world that we entered into 10 years ago. Are there any positive outcomes? I want to suggest one. Mayor, will you allow me to suggest a positive outcome?
I'm sort of a provocative person, and I hope I don't insult anyone. But we all understand this axiom. If we don't learn something from history, we're doomed to repeat ourselves. But what we don't learn from history is that we don't learn from history. And just as clearly as I understand, never having read it, Hitler promised in Mein Kampf he would do. We're being told what the plans are for us right now, and it's never going to be ending, and it's not going to end for our children and our grandchildren. I think that we're trying to put a good light on it. Well, they don't really mean this. We're trying to put a insult anybody, but I'm afraid it's the problem.
I guess I would disagree. Can I disagree with you? With anything provocative? I don't want to upset anybody.
Be
I
nice.
hasn't upset. Hegel, how often have you heard Hegel invoke down the showers? Hegel talked about history moving dialectically, right? But another way of saying that is history moves paradoxically. And I think that September 11th represented something paradoxical and at least may have opened the way to something positive. Michael has heard me say this before. What September 11th was about was not primarily rage at the West. What we experienced on September 11th was collateral damage. The real war is within the Muslim world, and has been within the Muslim world for quite a while. The war is between, the war is between those Muslims who believe in finding a way of accommodating to the modern world, and those Muslims who believe that the only way to be a proper Muslim is to live in the same way that the Prophet did in the 8th century. There is an incredible chasm between those two perspectives, and the Islamists hoped to defeat the modern world by showing them the vulnerability of the West. The attack on the West was a way of demonstrating to those people who wanted to live in some kind of accommodation with the West that the West isn't everything that somehow they imagined that it would be. So they attacked the symbols of modernity. Who won that battle? I'm not foolish enough to suggest that we know the answer, right? It is too early to tell. The forces of fundamentalism could still prevail, which is Don's fear. Certainly, September 11th unveiled for many of us the amount of what I can only call primitivism that exists in the Muslim world. Some of us in Poughkeepsie experienced it not long after September 11th. Some of us were involved in a dialogue with Muslim representatives of our own local community. The dialogue stopped abruptly when one of the leaders of the Muslim community here in Poughkeepsie, a person no less educated than any of us in this room, suggested that September 11th was just a plot, couldn't be carried out by Muslims. That it had to be carried out. He was somewhat delicate because he was speaking to Jews. It was carried out by other forces. The CIA and others really were behind September 11th. Well, that revealed, should we say it nicely, right? A degree of primitivism that was kind of shocking. Not all that long after September 11th, about a year or two later, I think, the State Department sent a number of us representing different faith groups to meet with Muslims in other parts of the world. And I remember vividly talking about primitivism here. We went to the leading Muslim university in India. I don't think I've ever told this congregation this very fine story. So we went to this is the university in India that Muslims took great pride in. It began the whole process of Indian Muslim modernization. And to us, and we were sitting out, we were on a dais,